Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The glow of the computer screen illuminated Adriel's face as his fingers hovered over the keyboard. He glanced nervously at his bedroom door, ensuring it was locked, before returning his attention to the website before him. The cursor blinked enticingly next to the Place Order button, tempting him to take the plunge. Adriel had been wrestling with his identity for months, maybe even years. The constant feeling of disconnect between his inner self and outer appearance had become too much to bear. He'd spent countless nights researching, watching videos, and reading forums about transitioning. Now he felt ready to take the first step. The website promised fast-acting hormone supplements that would unlock your true self. It seemed too good to be true, but desperation clouded Adriel's judgment. With a deep breath, he clicked the button and completed his purchase. Days passed, each one filled with anticipation and anxiety. Adriel jumped every time the doorbell rang, terrified his parents might intercept the package. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, a small, unmarked box arrived. Adriel's hands trembled as he opened it, revealing a single, nondescript pill nestled in bubble wrap. There were no instructions, no leaflet explaining dosage or side effects. Just the pill, small and white, holding the promise of change. He stared at it for what felt like hours, debating whether to take it or not. The logical part of his brain screamed that this was reckless, dangerous even. But the part of him that had felt wrong for so long whispered that this could be the answer. In the end, desire won out over caution. Adriel swallowed the pill dry, wincing as it scraped down his throat. He waited, heart pounding, for something, anything, to happen. But as the minutes ticked by, he felt no different. Disappointed, but not surprised, Adriel went to bed that night convinced he'd wasted his money on a placebo. He drifted off to sleep, unaware that his world was about to change dramatically. The first thing Adriel noticed upon waking was how soft his sheets felt against his skin. It was as if every nerve ending had become hypersensitive overnight. He blinked groggily, reaching up to rub his eyes, when he froze. Something felt different. Adriel's hand trembled as he brought it in front of his face. His fingers seemed more slender, his nails longer and more delicate. Heart racing, he sat up abruptly and gasped at the unfamiliar weight on his chest. "No way," he whispered, voice higher and softer than he remembered. "This can't be real." But as Adriel stumbled out of bed and towards the full-length mirror on his closet door, reality hit him like a tidal wave. The person staring back at him was undeniably female. Long chestnut hair cascaded over slender shoulders. Wide, doe-like eyes blinked in disbelief. Curves that definitely hadn't been there the night before were now prominently displayed beneath his oversized t-shirt. Adriel's knees buckled and he sank to the floor, mind reeling. This wasn't what he'd expected, not even close. He'd hoped for subtle changes, maybe some softening of his features or a slight redistribution of fat. But this was a complete transformation. "What have I done?" Adriel whispered, voice cracking with emotion. He, or rather she, ran trembling hands over her new body, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the change. A knock at the door startled Adriel out of her shocked reverie. "Honey, are you up?" her mother's voice called. "Breakfast is ready." Panic seized Adriel's chest. How could she possibly explain this to her parents? To anyone? She cleared her throat, trying to deepen her voice. "I'm not feeling well, Mom. I think I'll stay in bed today." There was a pause on the other side of the door. "Are you sure? Do you need me to bring you anything?" "No," Adriel said quickly, wincing at how high-pitched and feminine her voice sounded. "I mean, no thank you. I just need to rest." "All right, sweetie. Let me know if you need anything." Adriel listened to her mother's footsteps fade away, then let out a shaky breath. She had bought herself some time, but what now? She couldn't hide in her room forever. Gathering her courage, Adriel stood and approached the mirror again. She studied her reflection, taking in every detail of her new appearance. Despite the shock and fear, there was a small part of her that felt right. like she was finally seeing her true self for the first time. But the practical part of her brain quickly took over. She needed clothes that fit, for starters. Adriel rummaged through her closet, grateful that she'd always preferred looser, more androgynous clothing. She managed to find a pair of sweatpants with a drawstring waist and a hoodie that was only slightly too big now. As she dressed, Adriel's mind raced with questions. Was this permanent? Would she change back? Should she try to find another pill to reverse the effects? And most pressingly, how was she going to navigate the world as a completely different person? Adriel's stomach growled, reminding her that she couldn't hide in her room forever. She needed food, and more importantly, she needed answers. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked her door and peered out into the hallway. The coast was clear. She crept downstairs, praying she wouldn't run into her parents. Luck was on her side. A note on the kitchen counter informed her that they had gone out for errands. Adriel breathed a sigh of relief and quickly made herself a sandwich, scarfing it down as she booted up the family computer in the living room. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she searched for information about the website where she'd bought the pill. To her horror, the site no longer existed. It was as if it had vanished into thin air, taking with it any hope of finding out what exactly she had taken. Adriel leaned back in the chair, running her hands through her new, longer hair. "What am I going to do?" she murmured, feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of her situation. She spent the next few hours scouring the internet for any information about sudden, complete gender transformations. Most of what she found was clearly fiction or conspiracy theories. Nothing came close to explaining what had happened to her. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped Adriel out of her research frenzy. Her parents were home. Panic surged through her once again as she realized she couldn't avoid them forever. Adriel quickly closed all the browser tabs and rushed back upstairs to her room. She paced back and forth, mind racing as she tried to come up with a plan. Should she tell them the truth? Would they even believe her? A gentle knock on her door made her jump. "Adriel?" her father's voice called. "Your mother said you weren't feeling well. Can I come in?" Adriel's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. The moment of truth. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Okay," she called out, wincing at the sound of her new voice. The door opened slowly, and Adriel watched as confusion, then shock spread across her father's face. He blinked rapidly, as if not trusting his own eyes. Who are you? Where's Adriel?" Adriel raised her hands in a placating gesture. "Dad, it's me. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I am Adriel. Something happened to me." Her father's face cycled through a range of emotions. Disbelief, anger, concern. Is this some kind of joke? Because it's not funny, young lady? "It's not a joke, Dad, I swear." Adriel's voice cracked with emotion. "I took something, a pill. I thought it would help me transition slowly, but this happened instead. I woke up like this." Her father stumbled back, leaning against the doorframe for support. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Things like this don't just happen." "I know it sounds insane," Adriel said, taking a hesitant step towards him. "But it's true. Ask me anything. Something only Adriel would know." For the next few minutes, Adriel's father grilled her with questions about their family history, childhood memories, and recent events. With each correct answer, the disbelief on his face slowly gave way to a mix of awe and concern. "I can't believe this," he finally said, shaking his head. "We need to tell your mother, and then we need to figure out what to do next." Explaining the situation to Adriel's mother was just as difficult and emotionally charged. There were tears, accusations of pranks gone too far, and finally, a reluctant acceptance of the impossible reality before them. As the shock began to wear off, practical concerns took center stage. "What about school?" Adriel's mother asked. "Your friends? How are we going to explain this to everyone?" Adriel hadn't even considered those aspects yet. The thought of facing her classmates and teachers in this new body made her stomach churn with anxiety. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe we could say I'm a cousin visiting from out of town, at least until we figure out if this is permanent or not. Her parents exchanged worried glances. And if it is permanent? Her father asked gently. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Adrielle hugged herself, suddenly feeling very small and scared. Then, I guess we'll have to tell the truth, or at least some version of it. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Adrielle's parents took her to several doctors, all of whom were baffled by her condition. Blood tests came back normal, showing no signs of any drugs or hormones that could explain the transformation. As far as medical science was concerned, Adrielle was simply a healthy young woman. Shopping for a new wardrobe was an experience Adrielle never could have prepared for. She felt awkward and out of place in the women's section, unsure of sizes and styles. Her mother tried to help, but it was clear she was just as lost in this new territory. As they stood in a changing room, surrounded by discarded outfits, Adrielle broke down in tears. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry for putting you through all this." Her mother pulled her into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking Adrielle's hair. "We'll get through this together. No matter what happens, you're still our child, and we love you." Those words meant more to Adrielle than any piece of clothing ever could. For the first time since her transformation, she felt a glimmer of hope that things might be okay. The story they concocted for the outside world was that Adrielle had gone to stay with relatives for a while to deal with some personal issues. In the meantime, his cousin, also named Adrielle, would be staying with the family and attending school in his place. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it bought them time to figure out a long-term plan. Adrielle spent hours practicing her new signature, getting used to her changed voice, and learning to move in her new body. It was like being born again, having to relearn so many basic skills she had once taken for granted. The night before she was due to start school, Adrielle lay awake in bed, anxiety gnawing at her insides. How would her friends react? Would anyone see through their deception? And most pressingly, how was she supposed to navigate the complex social world of high school as a girl when she had no idea how to be one? Morning came too quickly, and Adrielle found herself standing in front of her closet, paralyzed by indecision. After what felt like hours, she settled on a simple outfit: jeans, a flowy blouse, and comfortable flats. She applied a minimal amount of makeup, following tutorials she'd watched online, praying she didn't look ridiculous. "You look beautiful, honey," her mother said as Adrielle came downstairs. There were tears in her eyes, a mix of pride and sadness that made Adrielle's heart ache. The drive to school was silent, tension thick in the air. As they pulled up to the building, Adrielle's father turned to look at her. "Remember, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. We can figure something else out." Adrielle took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. "No, I need to do this. I can't hide forever." With one last hug from her parents, Adrielle stepped out of the car and into her new life. She could feel eyes on her as she walked through the school gates, whispers following in her wake. It took all her willpower not to turn and run. At the main office, she picked up her new schedule and a map of the school. The secretary gave her a warm smile, completely unaware that she was speaking to someone who had attended the school for years. Adrielle's first class was English, a subject she had always enjoyed. As she entered the classroom, she immediately spotted her best friend, Michael, sitting in his usual spot. For a moment, their eyes met, and Adrielle saw confusion flicker across Michael's face. She quickly looked away, heart pounding. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," the teacher announced. "This is Adrielle, cousin of our Adrielle. She'll be with us while he's away. Adrielle, would you like to introduce yourself?" All eyes turned to her, and Adrielle felt her mouth go dry. She cleared her throat, praying her voice wouldn't shake. "Hi, I'm Adrielle," she began, cringing internally at how obvious that sounded. "I'm staying with my cousin's family for a while. It's nice to meet you all." As she took her seat, Adrielle could hear the whispers start up again. She caught fragments of conversations, people commenting on her resemblance to boy Adrielle. speculation about why she was really here, and of course evaluations of her appearance. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Adrielle struggled to concentrate on her classes, too preoccupied with monitoring her behavior and trying to blend in. By lunchtime, she was exhausted. She sat alone at a table in the cafeteria, picking at her food without much appetite. Suddenly, a familiar voice made her look up. "Mind if I join you?" It was Michael, standing there with his lunch tray, an uncertain smile on his face. Adrielle nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Michael sat down across from her, studying her face intently. "So," he said after a moment, "you're Adrielle's cousin?" "That's right," Adrielle replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's weird," Michael continued, tilting his head. "You look so much like him. And you have the same name?" Adrielle's heart raced. She and her parents had prepared for this, come up with explanations, but faced with her best friend's scrutiny, all those carefully crafted stories fled her mind. "Family name," she managed to say. "We were born pretty close together, so our parents thought it would be cute." Michael nodded slowly, but Adrielle could see the doubt in his eyes. "How is he?" he asked. "Adrielle, I mean, my Adrielle. He hasn't been answering any of my texts or calls." The guilt hit Adrielle like a physical blow. In all the chaos of her transformation, she hadn't even thought about how her sudden disappearance would affect her friends. "He's dealing with some stuff," she said vaguely. "I'm sure he'll reach out when he's ready." Michael's face fell, and Adrielle had to resist the urge to reach out and comfort him the way she would have before. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I miss him." The rest of lunch passed in awkward small talk. Michael tried to make her feel welcome, telling her about the school and their classmates, but Adrielle could sense his underlying confusion and hurt. It broke her heart to see her best friend in pain and not be able to tell him the truth. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Adrielle felt a mix of relief and dread. She had survived her first day, but the weight of her deception was already taking its toll. How long could she keep this up? She was lost in thought as she walked to her locker, not paying attention to her surroundings. Suddenly, she collided with someone, sending books scattering across the floor. "I'm so sorry!" Adrielle exclaimed, dropping to her knees to help gather the fallen items. She looked up and found herself face to face with Emma, a girl she had admired from afar for years but never had the courage to talk to. Emma smiled, and Adrielle felt her heart skip a beat. "No worries," Emma said. "It happens. You're new here, right? Adrielle's cousin?" Adrielle nodded, handing Emma her books. Their fingers brushed, and Adrielle felt a jolt of electricity run through her. This was new. She had always thought Emma was beautiful, but now, in this body, the attraction felt different, more intense. "I'm Emma," the girl continued, either not noticing Adrielle's reaction or choosing to ignore it. "Listen, a bunch of us are going to grab coffee after school. Would you like to join us? It must be tough being the new kid." Adrielle hesitated. On one hand, she was exhausted and emotionally drained from the day. On the other, this was an opportunity she never would have had before. To spend time with Emma, to be part of her social circle. "Sure," Adrielle heard herself say. "That sounds great." Emma's smile widened. "Awesome! Meet us out front in 10 minutes. As Emma walked away, Adrielle leaned against her locker, mind reeling. What had she just agreed to? How was she supposed to act around these people who had been her classmates for years but now saw her as a stranger? But as she made her way to the front of the school, a small part of Adrielle felt excited. This was a chance to reinvent herself, to be the person she had always wanted to be, but never had the courage to become. The coffee shop was bustling with students, the air filled with the rich aroma of espresso and the chatter of conversation. Adrielle sat at a large table with Emma and several other girls, feeling both out of place and strangely at home. As the girls talked about classes, gossip, and plans for the weekend, Adrielle found herself relaxing. She didn't have to pretend to be someone she wasn't. In a way, she was already doing that just by being here. Instead, she could simply be herself, or at least the version of herself she was discovering. "So, Adrielle," one of the girls, Jasmine, asked during a lull in the conversation, "what's the deal with your cousin? Is he okay?" Adriel tensed, the now familiar anxiety creeping back in. He's going through some personal stuff, she said, sticking to the story. He needed some time away to figure things out. The girls exchanged glances. I hope he's all right, Emma said, genuine concern in her voice. He always seemed so nice, just really shy. Yeah, another girl chimed in. Remember that time in biology when he nearly fainted during the frog dissection? It was kind of adorable. Adriel felt her cheeks heat up at the memory. She hadn't realized her classmates had paid that much attention to her, to him. It was strange hearing them talk about her old self as if he were a different person. I'm sure he'll be back soon, Adriel said, trying to steer the conversation away from dangerous territory. So, what's the best class to take if you're into art? The subject change worked, and soon the girls were enthusiastically debating the merits of various electives. As Adriel listened and occasionally contributed to the conversation, she found herself enjoying the easy camaraderie of female friendship. It was something she had always observed from the outside, but never experienced firsthand. By the time they left the coffee shop, as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Adriel said goodbye to her new friends, promising to see them at school tomorrow. As she walked home, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, she felt guilty for deceiving everyone, for stepping into a life that wasn't really hers. But on the other hand, for the first time in her life, she felt like she was truly being herself. The constant discomfort and disconnect she had always felt in her old body was gone, replaced by a sense of rightness that was both exhilarating and terrifying. When she got home, her parents were waiting anxiously in the living room. How was your day, sweetheart? Her mother asked, worry evident in her voice. Adriel sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. It was intense, she said, but not terrible. I think I might be okay. Her parents exchanged relieved glances. That's wonderful, honey, her father said. But we need to talk about what happens next. We can't keep up this charade forever. Adriel nodded, the weight of reality settling back onto her shoulders. I know, she said softly, but I don't know how to go back to being him. I don't know if I want to. The admission hung in the air, heavy with implications. Her mother reached out, taking Adriel's hand. Whatever you decide, we're here for you. We just want you to be happy and healthy. Tears welled up in Adriel's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you both. That night, as Adriel lay in bed, she reflected on the whirlwind her life had become. A week ago, she had been a boy, struggling with his identity, feeling trapped in a body that didn't feel like home. Now, she was navigating life as a girl, experiencing a world she had only dreamed about. She thought about Michael, about the pain in his eyes when he asked about his best friend. She thought about Emma and the other girls, about the easy acceptance they had shown her. She thought about her parents, their unwavering support in the face of the impossible. Adriel didn't know what the future held. Would she find a way to reverse the transformation? Did she even want to? How would she explain the truth to everyone if this was permanent? But as she drifted off to sleep, one thing became clear. Whatever path she chose, whatever challenges lay ahead, Adriel was finally starting to feel comfortable in her own skin. And that, she realized, was worth more than any pill could ever promise. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster of emotions and experiences for Adriel. Each day brought new challenges and discoveries as she navigated her transformed life. She found herself torn between the guilt of living a lie and the exhilaration of finally feeling at home in her own body. School became both a refuge and a source of constant anxiety. Adriel threw herself into her studies, grateful for the distraction they provided. She discovered that some subjects came easier to her now, while others felt more challenging. Whether this was due to the physical changes in her brain or simply a shift in perspective, she couldn't say. Her friendship with Emma and the other girls deepened, and Adriel found herself experiencing the kind of close female bonds she had always envied from afar. They invited her to sleepovers, shopping trips, and study sessions. Each event was a minefield of potential slip-ups, but also an opportunity to embrace this new life. One Friday night, as they all sat in Emma's room, painting each other's nails and gossiping, Adriel felt a surge of belonging so strong it almost brought tears to her eyes. This was what she had always wanted, even if she hadn't known how to articulate it before. But the joy was always tempered by the knowledge that it was built on a foundation of lies. Adriel couldn't shake the feeling that she was an imposter, stealing experiences that weren't rightfully hers. The hardest part was seeing Michael. Her once best friend now looked at her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Adriel could see the hurt in his eyes every time she deflected questions about her cousin. She wanted desperately to tell him the truth, to confide in him the way she always had, but the fear of rejection and disbelief held her back. One day, after a particularly difficult encounter with Michael, Adriel found herself in the girls' bathroom, fighting back tears. As she splashed cold water on her face, trying to regain her composure, Emma walked in. "Hey, are you okay?" Emma asked, concern etched on her face. Adriel nodded, not trusting her voice. Emma wasn't convinced. "Is it about your cousin?" she pressed gently. "I noticed you looked upset after talking to Michael." Adriel's breath caught in her throat. This was her chance to come clean, to unburden herself of the lies. But as she opened her mouth, the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself saying, "It's just hard, you know? Seeing how much they all miss him? I feel like I'm intruding somehow." Emma pulled her into a hug, and Adriel melted into the embrace, guilt and gratitude warring in her heart. "You're not intruding," Emma assured her. "We're glad you're here, and I'm sure your cousin appreciates you looking out for his friends." If only you knew, Adriel thought, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. As the weeks turned into months, the question of permanence loomed larger in Adriel's mind. She and her parents had exhausted every medical and scientific avenue they could think of, but no one could explain her transformation, let alone reverse it. Adriel found herself conflicted. On one hand, the thought of going back to her old body filled her with dread. She had finally found a sense of comfort and rightness in her own skin. The dysphoria that had plagued her for years was gone. But on the other hand, living with the constant fear of discovery was taking its toll. One night, unable to sleep, Adriel crept downstairs and found her father in his study, poring over medical journals. He looked up as she entered, his face lined with exhaustion and worry. "Dad," Adriel said softly, I think we need to consider that this might be permanent." Her father sighed, removing his glasses to rub his tired eyes. "I know, sweetheart. Your mother and I have been discussing it too. We just want to make sure we've explored every option before we make any big decisions." Adriel nodded, throat tight with emotion. "And if it is permanent? What then?" Her father stood up and pulled her into a hug. "Then we figure it out together. We'll find a way to tell people the truth, or as much of it as we can. It won't be easy, but you're not alone in this." As Adriel clung to her father, she felt a mix of fear and relief wash over her. The road ahead would be difficult, but knowing she had her family's support made it seem less daunting. The next day at school, Adriel made a decision. She couldn't keep lying to everyone, especially not to Michael. After classes, she approached him in the parking lot. "Can we talk?" she asked, heart pounding. "Somewhere private?" Michael looked surprised but nodded. They walked to a quiet corner of the school grounds, away from prying eyes and ears. Adriel took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Michael, I haven't been entirely honest with you about who I am, about your friend." As Adriel spoke, pouring out the impossible truth, she watched Michael's face cycle through disbelief, anger, confusion, and finally, a cautious acceptance. When she finished, silence stretched between them. "I know it sounds crazy," Adriel said softly. "I wouldn't believe it either if it hadn't happened to me, but I swear, every word is true." Michael stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head with a wry smile. "You know, it explains a lot. The way you sometimes react to inside jokes, how you knew your way around the school on the first day." I knew something was off, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Adrielle felt tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry for lying to you. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid you'd hate me. Michael reached out and squeezed her hand. I could never hate you, Adrielle. You're my best friend, no matter what you look like on the outside. This is a lot to process, but I'm here for you. The relief that flooded through Adrielle was overwhelming. She threw her arms around Michael, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tightly, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more.